Alien store refused entry to poor old lady. Human shares his food. Minutes later, a luxurious. Commander Jack Welch strode through the gleaming corridors of Orbit 9, his dark green military uniform and tactical vest accentuating his muscular frame. The interstellar station hummed with activity, a nexus of commerce where dozens of alien species conducted business under the watchful eye of the station's notoriously strict security forces. Jack had just finished a 3-month deployment on the frontier and was enjoying his first day of shore leave. The coalition military had arranged accommodations for him in the human sector, but he decided to explore the alien quarters first. His stomach growled as he passed food stalls offering exotic cuisines from across the galaxy. Might as well grab something, he muttered to himself, fishing in his pocket for his credit chip. That's when he noticed the commotion outside Gralnak's Provisions, one of the most exclusive grocery establishments on the station. 2 hulking Vordarian security guards were forcefully escorting an elderly alien woman away from the entrance. Her wrinkled blue skin hung loosely on her frail frame, and her silver hair was pulled back in a disheveled bun. Her beige clothing was tattered and stained. "We've told you before," one guard snarled, his mandibles clicking with irritation. "No credits, no entry. This isn't a charity ward." "Please," the old woman pleaded, her voice surprisingly melodic despite her obvious distress. "I only need a few items. I can pay next cycle when my dash. "Save it for someone who cares," the second guard interrupted, shoving her roughly. She stumbled and nearly fell. Jack felt his blood boil. Without thinking, he marched toward the scene, his combat boots echoing against the polished floor. "Hey!" he called out, his voice carrying the natural authority of a military commander. "That's enough." The guards turned, their compound eyes narrowing at the human's approach. "This doesn't concern you, human," the first guard said dismissively. Jack ignored him, instead kneeling beside the elderly alien woman. "Are you all right, ma'am?" She looked up at him with luminous eyes that seemed to shimmer with an inner light despite her bedraggled appearance. "I am unharmed, thank you." Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a bag of potato chips, a luxury item he'd been saving for himself. "Here," he said, offering them to her. "Not much of a meal, but better than nothing." The woman's eyes widened slightly as she accepted the bag. "Your kindness is unexpected." "Move along," the second guard insisted. "Both of you. You're disrupting business." Jack stood to his full height, squaring his shoulders as he faced the guards. At 6'3", he towered over most humanoid species, and his years of military training had honed his body into a weapon. The guards, recognizing the unspoken threat, backed off slightly. "We're going," Jack said coolly. He offered his arm to the elderly woman. "Ma'am, would you care to join me for a proper meal?" She studied him for a moment, then nodded, taking his arm with surprising grace. As they walked away from the store, Jack could feel the stares of onlookers, some curious, others disapproving. "I am Elanda," the woman said as they found a bench near a decorative fountain. "May I know the name of my benefactor?" "Jack Welch, Commander, Earth Coalition Forces," he replied with a slight smile. "And it's just a bag of chips, hardly makes me a benefactor." Elanda carefully opened the bag, examining the contents with interest before taking a small bite. Her face lit up with delight. "Fascinating texture, crunchy yet dissolves pleasantly. What do you call these again?" "Potato chips. Pretty standard fare where I come from." "Earth cuisine continues to surprise me," she said, savoring another chip. "Your people have a remarkable talent for transforming simple ingredients into something memorable." As they chatted, Jack found himself increasingly intrigued by Elanda. Despite her appearance, she spoke with the refined cadence of someone educated, and her observations about interstellar politics were surprisingly insightful. Their conversation was interrupted by the distinctive hum of approaching engines. Jack looked up to see a sleek silver spacecraft descending toward the nearby landing pad. It was unlike any vessel he'd seen before. Its hull seemed to shimmer with an iridescent glow, and its design suggested both luxury and advanced technology far beyond standard coalition ships. A small crowd gathered to watch as the craft settled onto the pad with barely a whisper. The boarding ramp extended smoothly, and a delegation of elegantly dressed aliens emerged. Their attire marked them as officials of high rank, though Jack couldn't identify their species or affiliation. The lead figure, tall with similar blue skin to Elanda, but adorned in elaborate ceremonial garments, scanned the area before his gaze settled on their bench. He approached with purposeful strides, followed by his entourage. Jack instinctively tensed, his military training kicking in as he assessed potential threats. But Yolanda merely smiled, setting aside the now empty chip bag. The approaching alien stopped before them, and to Jack's astonishment, performed a deep, formal bow. "Matriarch," he said, his voice resonating with respect. "We have come for you." The crowd that had gathered gasped collectively. Jack turned to Yolanda, confusion evident on his face. She rose to her feet with newfound dignity, her posture straightening as though shedding an invisible burden. The transformation was remarkable. Suddenly, despite her ragged clothing, she exuded an unmistakable aura of authority. "Your timing is impeccable, Advisor Thalen," she said, her voice now carrying a commanding tone that had been absent before. She turned to Jack, who remained seated, trying to process this unexpected development. "Commander Welch," she said with a warm smile, "your kind heart deserves a worthy reward." She gestured toward the ship. "Allow me to introduce you to my granddaughter." A figure appeared at the top of the boarding ramp, a young woman with smooth light blue skin that seemed to glow with vitality. As she descended, Jack couldn't help but stare. Her movements were fluid and graceful, her form-fitting dress accentuating a figure that was both alien and undeniably feminine. Bright sapphire eyes met his, and her lips curved into a smile that sent his heart racing. "This is Liana," Yolanda said, noting Jack's reaction with evident amusement. "I believe you two have much to discuss." The boarding ramp of the luxurious spacecraft hummed softly as Jack followed Yolanda and her entourage. His military instincts remained on high alert despite the cordial invitation. Years of combat experience had taught him to be wary of situations that seemed too good to be true. Liana walked beside him, her proximity sending an inexplicable warmth through his body. The subtle fragrance emanating from her skin reminded him of jasmine and something else, something alien yet intoxicating. "First time aboard an Azurian vessel, Commander?" she asked, her voice melodic and refined. "First time hearing of Azurians, actually," Jack admitted with a half-smile. "Earth's diplomatic relations don't extend this far into the Orion Arm." "Then consider yourself privileged," she replied, her sapphire eyes twinkling with amusement. "Few outsiders are welcomed aboard the Celestial Harmony." The interior of the ship was even more impressive than its exterior. Corridors curved in organic patterns, illuminated by soft blue light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The air felt unusually fresh and invigorating. Jack found himself taking deeper breaths, enjoying the subtle energy that filled his lungs. They were led to a spacious chamber that Jack assumed was some sort of diplomatic reception room. Transparent panels offered a breathtaking view of Orbit 9 and the star-studded void beyond. Furnishings that appeared to be crafted from a material resembling mother of pearl were arranged in a circular pattern. Yolanda, now walking with the dignified bearing of royalty rather than the hunched posture of a beggar, gestured for Jack to sit. The transformation in her appearance and demeanor was so complete that he found it difficult to reconcile this regal figure with the destitute woman he'd met outside the grocery store. "You must have questions, Commander Welch," she said, settling into what was clearly the central seat of authority. "A few," Jack replied dryly, "starting with why the ruler of an advanced civilization was being thrown out of a grocery store." Yolanda exchanged glances with Advisor Thalen before responding. "I was conducting research. Research that required you to be humiliated by security guards? The matriarch wished to experience your station without the filters of privilege," Thalen interjected, his tone suggesting he had opposed the idea. "To understand how the less fortunate are treated, and to test the character of those I encountered," Yolanda added. "You were the only one who showed kindness without expectation of reward." Jack shifted uncomfortably under her appreciative gaze. "Anyone would have done the same?" "No," Liana said softly, taking a seat beside him, closer than protocol would likely dictate. "They wouldn't. We observed for 3 full cycles. Dozens passed by, averting their eyes. Some even joined the guards in their mockery. The proximity of Liana was distracting. Jack could feel the warmth radiating from her body, and each time she moved, her arm brushed against his, sending unexpected jolts of electricity through his nervous system. "Your species intrigues us, Commander," Yolanda continued. "Humans are relatively new to interstellar society, Yet you've already established yourselves as a significant presence. Your adaptability is remarkable. We're survivors, Jack said simply. It's what we do. Indeed. Which brings me to why I've invited you here. Elanda leaned forward, her expression becoming serious. The Azurian Federation is considering a formal alliance with Earth. Your act of compassion has convinced me that humans possess qualities we value. Jack blinked in surprise. I'm just a soldier, matriarch. Diplomatic negotiations are well above my pay grade. Perhaps, she conceded with a slight smile, but you are now our honored guest, and your insights will be valuable as we proceed. As the conversation continued, Jack became increasingly aware of Liana's subtle movements beside him. Her hand occasionally brushed against his, and each time their eyes met, he felt a connection that transcended species. There was an unmistakable attraction building between them, something primal yet refined. When refreshments were served, Liana took it upon herself to explain each exotic delicacy to him, leaning close enough that her breath tickled his ear. The cultural briefing quickly became an intimate exchange, her fingers occasionally guiding his to particularly flavorful morsels. Our customs may seem forward to you, she murmured during one such moment. Azurians believe in the honest expression of attraction. Does this make you uncomfortable? Jack swallowed hard. Not uncomfortable, just unprepared. Her laugh was like wind chimes. Spontaneity is part of the experience, Commander. As the formal meeting concluded, Jack found himself invited to stay aboard as a special envoy while the diplomatic processes were initiated. Elanda retired to her quarters, leaving Liana to show him to his accommodations. The quarters seemed more intimate now that they were alone. Liana walked with fluid grace, occasionally glancing back at him with an expression that made his pulse quicken. Here, she said finally, stopping before a doorway that irised open at their approach. These will be your quarters during your stay. The room beyond was luxurious by any standard, with the same organic aesthetic as the rest of the ship. A large viewport dominated one wall, offering a spectacular view of space. It's impressive, Jack said, stepping inside. Liana followed, the door closing behind her. There's something you should know, Commander, she said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Jack, he corrected. If we're going to be working together, you might as well use my first name. Jack, she repeated, the name sounding exotic in her accent. Not everything is as it appears. My grandmother's mission was not merely diplomatic. He tensed slightly. Go on. There are factions within our government opposed to alliance with humans. They believe your species is too unpredictable, too passionate. Her eyes held his as she spoke the last word. They've been working to sabotage any potential agreement. And you're telling me this because… She moved closer, her hand coming to rest lightly on his chest. Through his uniform, he could feel the unusual warmth of her touch. Because I believe they're wrong about humans, about you. Her eyes searched his. And because I need someone I can trust. The air between them seemed charged with electricity. Jack was acutely aware of every detail of her face, the subtle iridescence of her skin, the depth of her eyes, the curve of her lips. Trust is earned, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Then let's begin earning it, she replied, her hand sliding up to rest against his neck. Starting now. Morning aboard the Celestial Harmony arrived with a gentle illumination that mimicked natural dawn. Jack awoke feeling more rested than he had in months, despite the previous evening's revelations about potential conspiracies within the Azurian government. After a refreshing sonic shower, a technology far more advanced than Earth's water-based equivalents, Jack found Azurian garments laid out for him. The fabric felt impossibly light yet substantial, conforming perfectly to his muscular frame while allowing complete freedom of movement. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door irised open to reveal Liana, dressed in a flowing azure ensemble that complemented her skin tone. Her eyes widened appreciatively at the sight of Jack in Azurian clothing. The traditional attire suits you, she said, her gaze lingering on how the fabric accentuated his broad shoulders. Though I must admit, your military uniform had its own appeal. Jack felt a flush of warmth at her open admiration. Is this level of directness normal for Azurians, or should I feel special? Both, she replied with a smile that made his pulse quicken. Azurians value honesty in all things, especially matters of attraction, but the intensity. She stepped closer, her scent enveloping him. That is unique to us. I'd like to learn more about your customs, Jack said, genuinely curious despite the distraction of her proximity. If we're going to work together on this conspiracy, I should understand your culture better. An excellent suggestion. We'll begin with breakfast, a crucial ritual for Azurians. She offered her arm in a formal gesture. And perhaps you can educate me about human customs in return. The ship's dining hall was a marvel of bioarchitecture, with living plants integrated into the structure itself. They created a private alcove where a table was set with an array of exotic foods. In Azurian culture, sharing a meal is considered an intimate act, Liana explained, selecting a luminescent fruit and slicing it with practiced precision. Almost as intimate as what humans might consider a kiss. She offered a slice directly to Jack, her fingers brushing his lips as he accepted it. The fruit dissolved on his tongue in a burst of complex flavors, sweet, tangy, with hints of spice he couldn't identify. That's incredible, he murmured. The first taste is always the most intense, she replied, her eyes never leaving his, much like other first experiences. Throughout the meal, Liana explained various Azurian customs, from their complex greeting rituals to their belief in energy transference between compatible beings. Jack found himself fascinated not just by the information, but by her animated expressions as she spoke. In turn, he shared stories of Earth, its diverse cultures, traditions, and the resilience that had allowed humanity to overcome numerous challenges before reaching the stars. Your species' determination is remarkable, Liana observed. When faced with obstacles, you don't retreat, you adapt and push forward. It's what makes humans such valuable potential allies. And what makes certain factions fear us, Jack added, bringing the conversation back to their more serious concerns. Tell me more about these opposition groups. What exactly are we looking for? Liana's expression grew somber. The primary faction is led by High Counselor Marith. He believes humans are too unpredictable, too emotional to be trusted with Azurian technology and knowledge. And what does he plan to do about it? That's what we need to discover. She activated a holographic display embedded in the table. I've accessed restricted security protocols. There's a council meeting scheduled for tomorrow that grandmother will attend. If there's a plot against her, that would be the ideal time to execute it. Jack studied the three-dimensional layout of the council chambers, his military training automatically identifying vulnerabilities and potential ambush points. We need access to their communications, he said, and we should review the security personnel assignments for the meeting. Liana nodded, impressed by his strategic thinking. I can get us into the central data hub, but it's heavily monitored. We'll need a distraction. Their planning session was interrupted when Advisor Thalen entered the dining hall. His eyes narrowed slightly at their proximity before he composed his features into a neutral expression. Commander Welch, the matriarch requests your presence for a cultural exchange demonstration this afternoon. Several council members wish to evaluate human capabilities firsthand. What kind of demonstration? Jack asked, immediately suspicious. Combat proficiency, Thalen replied with the barest hint of satisfaction. Against our elite guards. After Thalen departed, Liana placed her hand on Jack's arm. This is Marith's doing. He wants to humiliate you, to show the council that humans are either weak or dangerously aggressive. Then he's in for a surprise, Jack said with quiet confidence. I've trained against non-human opponents before. Our warriors are formidable, she warned, and they'll be using techniques you've never encountered. Then perhaps you should give me a crash course, he suggested. Liana led him to a training chamber, where she demonstrated basic Azurian combat forms. The movements were fluid and graceful, reminiscent of Earth's Tai Chi, but with an alien precision that made them devastatingly effective. As they practiced, their bodies moved in increasingly synchronized patterns. Each touch, each corrective adjustment of his stance, sent currents of awareness through Jack's body. The physical training gradually transformed into something more intimate, a dance of mutual discovery. In Azurian culture, Liana explained, her breath warm against his neck as she guided his arm through a defensive position. Combat training is considered one of the most profound ways to understand another being. Is that why my heart feels like it's about to burst from my chest? Jack asked, only half joking. Her laughter was musical. That's your body recognizing compatibility. Azurians believe that when two beings move in harmony, their energies align. She stepped back, her eyes meeting his with unmistakable intent. Such alignment is rare and precious. Jack reached out, tracing the delicate contours of her face with his fingertips. On Earth, we have a saying, timing is everything. And what does your timing tell you, Commander? She whispered. That we have a conspiracy to uncover, a demonstration to prepare for. His voice grew husky as he drew her closer, and something extraordinary beginning between us. Their lips met in a kiss that transcended species, a connection that felt both alien and profoundly right. The Azurian ceremonial arena gleamed under artificial light that mimicked the spectrum of their homeworld sun. Jack stood at one entrance, rolling his shoulders to loosen muscles still pleasantly sore from yesterday's training session with Liana. He wore a modified version of his military uniform. The matriarch had insisted he represent Earth in this demonstration. Around the circular arena, tiered seating accommodated the Azurian High Council and various dignitaries. Jack spotted Alanda in an elevated position of honor, her regal bearing unmistakable even from a distance. Beside her sat a stern-faced male Azurian with elaborate silver markings on his blue skin. High Counselor Marith, Jack presumed. Liana approached, carrying what appeared to be ceremonial wrappings for his hands. These are woven with protective fibers, she explained, her fingers lingering as she bound his hands. They'll absorb some of the impact without diminishing the demonstration's authenticity. Thoughtful, Jack said with a half smile. Any last-minute advice? Remember what I taught you about our center of balance. We appear similar to humans, but our internal structure is different. Her eyes held concern mixed with something deeper. And Jack, Marith has selected 3 of our most accomplished warriors. No one would think less of you for yielding when necessary. Noted, he replied, though they both knew he had no intention of yielding. Too much was at stake, not just his pride, but the perception of humanity's strength as potential allies. A resonant tone signaled the beginning of the ceremony. Advisor Thalin stepped into the center of the arena, his voice amplified to reach all attendees. Esteemed council, honored guests, we gather to witness a demonstration of combat prowess between Commander Jack Welch of Earth and champions of the Azurian Guard. This exhibition serves to evaluate the physical capabilities of our potential allies. Jack caught the subtle emphasis on physical, implying humans might be lacking in other areas. Thalin continued with an explanation of rules that boiled down to no weapons, no permanent injuries, victory by submission or incapacitation. The first opponent entered, an Azurian male with the build of a lightweight boxer, lithe and quick. He performed a formal salute that Jack mimicked based on Liana's earlier instructions. Begin! Thalin commanded, quickly retreating from the arena. The Azurian moved with blinding speed, closing the distance before Jack had fully settled into his stance. A flurry of strikes targeted pressure points that would incapacitate an Azurian, but Jack's human physiology gave him an unexpected advantage. The nerve clusters weren't in the same locations. Jack absorbed several hits, analyzing his opponent's patterns before countering with a technique borrowed from Earth's Muay Thai. The impact of his elbow against the Azurian's torso produced a collective gasp from the audience. The match continued with increasing intensity. Jack took hits that would have felled most humans, his military training and natural endurance keeping him upright. When he finally managed to lock his opponent in a submission hold adapted from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Azurian signaled surrender. A murmur rippled through the council members. Jack helped his opponent to his feet, offering a respectful bow that earned him a surprised nod in return. The second champion proved more challenging, a female warrior whose fighting style incorporated acrobatic maneuvers that seemed to defy gravity. Jack found himself on the defensive, barely avoiding techniques that utilized the Azurian's unique joint flexibility. Your human is remarkably resilient, Jack overheard Marith commenting to Alanda. But resilience alone won't secure victory. As if to prove his point, the female warrior executed a spinning kick that connected solidly with Jack's ribs. Pain lanced through his side, but he channeled it into focused determination, a human trait that had served his species well throughout their evolution. Adapting mid-combat, Jack employed a strategy that capitalized on his greater mass and core strength. When the Azurian attempted another aerial attack, he timed his response perfectly, using her momentum against her to execute a takedown that ended with his opponent pinned and unable to continue. Rising to his feet, Jack noticed a shift in the council's demeanor, from dismissive curiosity to genuine interest. Even Marith leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Final champion advance," Thalen announced. The third opponent made the previous two look like amateurs. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with shoulders twice the width of an average Azurian, he moved with the controlled power of a predator. "Counselor Marith's personal guard captain," Liana whispered from the sidelines, "trained in ancient combat arts forbidden to most Azurians." Jack barely had time to process this information before the massive warrior attacked. The first exchange left him staggering, blood trickling from a split lip. The Azurian's technique was flawless, each movement flowing into the next with devastating precision. For several minutes, Jack could only defend, absorbing punishment while searching for weaknesses. The council watched in silence as the human was driven back repeatedly, his defeat seemingly inevitable. But something happened that the Azurians hadn't anticipated. Jack started laughing. The sound was so unexpected that his opponent hesitated momentarily. Jack used that split second to launch a counterattack, his movements no longer mimicking Azurian forms, but embracing purely human fighting styles, unpredictable, adaptive, and fueled by an indomitable will to survive. "What you're witnessing," Elanda announced to the council, "is why humans have thrived against all odds. They don't break under pressure, they transform it into strength." The tide of the match shifted. Jack's unorthodox techniques confused the Azurian warrior, whose training hadn't prepared him for human improvisation. When Jack finally landed a decisive strike, a perfectly executed combination that ended with his opponent crashing to the floor, the arena fell silent. Jack stood panting, bruised but unbowed. He extended his hand to the fallen champion in a human gesture of respect. After a moment's hesitation, the Azurian accepted it. "The demonstration concludes," Thalen announced, unable to completely mask his astonishment. "The council will deliberate on what we have witnessed." As Jack exited the arena, Liana rushed to his side, her eyes shining with pride and another emotion he was beginning to recognize. "You fought magnificently," she whispered, her fingers gently tracing a bruise forming on his jawline. Even Marith couldn't hide his impression. "Did we learn anything useful?" Jack asked quietly, mindful of potential observers. "More than you know," she replied. "Marith's guard captain never fights in these demonstrations. His presence confirms our suspicions. They're taking the threat of human alliance seriously enough to reveal their best warrior." "Then we're making progress," Jack said, wincing slightly as he wrapped an arm around her waist. "Though I might need some of that Azurian healing technology you mentioned." Her smile held promise that transcended diplomatic relations. "I know exactly what you need, Commander, and I intend to provide it, personally." The healing chamber aboard the Celestial Harmony resembled a cross between a luxury spa and an advanced medical facility. Translucent panels pulsed with soft blue light, while the air carried a subtle herbal scent that immediately eased Jack's breathing. "Remove your upper garments," Liana instructed as the door sealed behind them. "The healing field works best with direct skin contact." Jack complied, wincing as he peeled off his sweat-soaked uniform top. The combat demonstration had left him with an impressive collection of bruises spreading across his torso and a cut above his eyebrow that still oozed blood. Liana's eyes widened at the extent of his injuries. "You concealed your pain well," she said, her fingers gently tracing a particularly vivid bruise on his ribs. "Most beings would have yielded after half such punishment." "Humans are stubborn that way," Jack replied with a pained smile. "It's gotten us into trouble throughout our history, but it's also saved us more times than I can count." She guided him to a reclined platform in the center of the room. As he settled onto its surprisingly comfortable surface, Liana activated a control panel. Immediately, a fine mist descended from overhead, coating his skin with microscopic particles that tingled pleasantly. "Nanomedicines," she explained. "They'll accelerate your natural healing processes and reduce inflammation." Jack felt the pain begin to subside almost immediately. Earth's medical technology is advanced, but nothing like this. "Perhaps this will be among the first technologies shared when our alliance is formalized," Liana suggested, sitting beside him on the platform's edge. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, monitoring his response to the treatment. "If the alliance happens," Jack reminded her, "we still have Marith and his faction to worry about." As if summoned by his words, a chime sounded. Liana checked a communication device on her wrist. The council has reached a preliminary decision. We're summoned to hear it in 1 hour. Her expression grew concerned. That's unusually quick. Good news or bad? Jack asked. Uncertain, but your performance in the arena clearly forced them to reconsider their preconceptions. She smiled, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his skin that had nothing to do with medical assessment. You impressed them, Jack. Even Marith couldn't hide his surprise. Jack caught her hand, bringing it to his lips in a human gesture that made her breath catch. I had excellent training. Their eyes locked, the air between them charged with unspoken desire. Liana leaned closer, her lips a breath away from his, when she suddenly stiffened and pulled back. Her eyes darted to a corner of the ceiling. Following her gaze, Jack noticed nothing unusual, but her expression had turned guarded. The nanomedicines should be fully absorbed now, she said, her voice louder and more formal than before. She reached for a small device in her pocket and discreetly pressed it into his palm. Jack understood immediately. They were being watched. He closed his fingers around the device, some kind of scanner, while maintaining a casual demeanor. The pain is almost gone. Your medical technology is remarkable. Liana stood and busied herself adjusting the chamber's controls while Jack activated the scanner, sweeping it subtly around the room as he stretched his healing muscles. The device vibrated when he pointed it toward 3 different locations. Surveillance devices hidden in the chamber's architecture. We should prepare for the council meeting, Liana announced. I've brought fresh attire appropriate for the occasion. As Jack dressed in the formal Azurian garments she provided, they exchanged meaningful glances, communicating silently about their discovery. When fully clothed, Jack casually draped an arm around her shoulders and whispered directly into her ear, his lips brushing against her skin in what would appear to observers as an intimate gesture. Marith's people. She nodded almost imperceptibly, turning to adjust his collar in a way that allowed her to whisper back. The healing chambers should be secure. Few have access to surveillance systems here. They left the chamber arm in arm, maintaining the appearance of a diplomatic escort while remaining hyper-aware of their surroundings. In the corridor, Liana guided him toward the council chambers, but took an unexpected detour into what appeared to be a maintenance access way. We have 40 minutes before the summons, she explained once they were alone. Enough time to warn grandmother and scan for other surveillance. I noticed something else during the combat demonstration, Jack said, keeping his voice low. Marith's guard captain, he was wearing some kind of communication device. He kept touching his collar after each exchange, like he was receiving instructions. Liana's eyes widened. That's forbidden during ceremonial combat. It confirms Marith is willing to break our most sacred traditions to undermine the alliance. There's more, Jack continued. On my way to the arena, I overheard 2 crew members discussing security rotations for tonight's diplomatic banquet. They mentioned a special delivery for the matriarch's table. An assassination attempt? Liana's voice was barely audible, her face paling to a lighter shade of blue. Possibly. We need to alert security without tipping off Marith's people. They hurried through the ship's service corridors, avoiding main pathways where they might be observed. Jack marveled at how quickly their relationship had evolved, from strangers to confidants to something deeper, all within the span of 2 days. There was an efficiency to their partnership that transcended species differences, as if they'd been designed to complement each other. When they reached the matriarch's private chambers, they found Alanda already in discussion with advisor Thalon. Both Azurians looked up in surprise at their unannounced arrival. Grandmother, Liana began without preamble, we have reason to believe Counselor Marith is planning an attempt on your life during tonight's banquet. Thalon's expression darkened. A serious accusation. What evidence supports this? Jack quickly relayed what he'd overheard, adding his observations about the surveillance devices and the combat irregularities. As he spoke, he noticed Thalon's hand move subtly toward a communication device on his belt. In one fluid motion, Jack seized the advisor's wrist. I wouldn't, he said quietly. Commander, Alanda exclaimed, explain yourself immediately. With respect, Matriarch, I suggest you ask your advisor why he's attempting to alert someone about our concerns. Jack maintained his grip, noting that Thalon made no move to resist. If he's loyal to you, he has nothing to fear from my caution. A tense silence filled the chamber. Thalen's eyes shifted from Jack to Alanda, then to Liana, before finally returning to the matriarch. "I was merely following protocol," he said smoothly. "Security concerns must be logged immediately." "By contacting whom?" Alanda asked, her tone deceptively gentle. Thalen hesitated just long enough. "The chief of security, of course." "Interesting," Alanda replied, "considering I relieved Chief Naren of duty this morning and haven't yet appointed a replacement." The advisor's composure cracked. His free hand darted toward a concealed weapon, but Jack was faster. A quick strike to Thalen's solar plexus, or the Azurian equivalent, doubled him over, allowing Jack to disarm him efficiently. "I suspected a traitor in my inner circle," Alanda said, watching dispassionately as Jack secured the advisor. "I didn't expect it to be you, Thalen." "The council summons," Liana realized suddenly. "It could be a trap." "Or an opportunity," Jack suggested, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. "If we control the narrative?" Yolanda's eyes gleamed with approval. "Commander Welch, I believe it's time to demonstrate that humans excel not only in combat, but in strategy as well." "A three-pronged approach," Jack announced, pacing the secure conference room where they had retreated after detaining Thalen. "We expose, we protect, and we formalize." The matriarch nodded approvingly as Jack outlined his strategy on a holographic display. Liana stood close beside him, occasionally adding Azurian political context to his military precision. "First, we attend the council meeting as summoned," Jack continued. "But instead of walking into their trap, Matriarch Alanda will change the agenda to formally propose me as Earth's interim ambassador." "Forcing a public vote," Alanda noted. "Any move against you would then become an interstellar incident rather than an internal matter." "Exactly. Meanwhile, we'll have implemented enhanced security protocols for tonight's banquet." Jack gestured to the loyal security officers Alanda had summoned. "I'll personally oversee the preparations, introducing some human tactics that Maris people won't anticipate." "And the exposure?" Liana asked, her hand brushing against his as she leaned forward to study the display. Jack smiled grimly. "That's where we get creative. Thalen's communication device gives us access to their network. We'll use it to feed false information while monitoring their responses." The next 30 minutes were a flurry of coordinated activity. Jack worked with the security team, implementing protocols he'd learned in Earth's special forces. The Azurians were initially skeptical of his unorthodox methods, but quickly recognized their effectiveness. "Your species approaches protection differently," observed Kieran, the senior security officer. "We build elaborate systems. You assume systems will fail and prepare accordingly." "Humans learn the hard way that no defense is impenetrable," Jack explained. "We always have backup plans for our backup plans." As the security team dispersed to implement Jack's directives, he found himself momentarily alone with Liana in a maintenance corridor. Without surveillance or prying eyes, she pulled him into an alcove, her body pressing against his with unmistakable intent. "If we survive this day," she whispered against his lips, "I intend to explore human backup plans in much more personal detail." Their kiss was brief but intense, a promise of what awaited them if they succeeded. Jack felt a surge of determination that transcended duty or diplomacy. What had begun as a chance encounter outside an alien grocery store had evolved into something profound. "We'll survive," he assured her, "and afterward, I'll show you why humans are known for their endurance." Her eyes darkened to a deeper blue, and she traced a finger along his jawline. "I've already witnessed your stamina in combat. I look forward to experiencing it in more pleasurable contexts." They reluctantly separated, professionalism reasserting itself as they approached the council chambers. The grand hall was imposing, a semicircular amphitheater with tiered seating for council members and a central platform where petitioners traditionally stood. High Counselor Marith was already seated in his position of prominence, his expression carefully neutral as Jack and Liana entered alongside the matriarch. If he was surprised by Thalen's absence, he gave no indication. "Matriarch Elanda," he acknowledged with a formal bow, "we are prepared to deliver our preliminary assessment of the human demonstration." "Before we proceed," Elanda replied smoothly, "I wish to amend today's agenda." A murmur rippled through the assembled counselors. Marith's eyes narrowed fractionally. "The council has already convened for a specific purpose," he objected. "Procedural changes require advance notice." Unless superseded by matters of interstellar diplomacy, Yolanda countered, I invoke the primacy clause to formally recognize Commander Jack Welch as Earth's interim ambassador to the Azurian Federation. The chamber erupted in surprised exclamations. Jack maintained a composed demeanor, despite the sudden elevation of his status. From the corner of his eye, he noticed several council members exchanging covert glances. Mareth's co-conspirators, undoubtedly. This is highly irregular, Mareth protested, rising from his seat. The commander has no diplomatic credentials. He is merely a military representative who happened to be present during your research expedition. His actions demonstrated the finest qualities humanity has to offer, Yolanda replied. Compassion, courage, adaptability, precisely the traits we seek in diplomatic relations. As the debate intensified, Jack observed subtle movements among Mareth's security personnel. They were repositioning, establishing sightlines to key exits. Through his earpiece, he received confirmation from Kieran that the banquet hall was being secured according to his specifications. The council will vote, Yolanda declared, overriding further objections. As is tradition, those in favor will illuminate blue, those opposed, red. The voting process was swift. To Jack's surprise, a clear majority of lights glowed blue. Mareth's faction, though vocal, was apparently smaller than they had estimated. Ambassador Welch is recognized, Yolanda announced formally. Let it be recorded in the council archives. Mareth's composure finally cracked. This charade has gone far enough, he snapped. The human's presence threatens our very way of life. Their species is unpredictable, aggressive. And standing right here, Jack interrupted, stepping forward. Counselor Mareth, I understand your concerns. Change is always frightening, especially when it challenges long-held beliefs. The direct address, a breach of Azurian protocol where petitioners typically spoke only when addressed, created another stir. But Jack continued, his voice carrying the natural authority that had served him well throughout his military career. Humans and Azurians are different, yes, but our differences create strength when combined. Your technology and our adaptability, your tradition and our innovation. As he spoke, Jack moved purposefully toward Mareth's position, noting how the counselor's guards tensed. Through his earpiece, Kieran reported that they had identified the sabotage food intended for the matriarch's banquet table and had apprehended 2 co-conspirators. What humanity offers isn't disruption, but partnership, Jack continued. We've faced extinction-level threats throughout our history and survived because we embrace change rather than fear it. He was close enough now to see beads of moisture forming on Mareth's brow. The counselor's hand moved subtly toward what Jack suspected was a concealed communication device. Of course, Jack added casually, partnership requires honesty. Speaking of which, he activated the device Liana had given him earlier, projecting a holographic display for all to see. These are communications between Counselor Mareth and several co-conspirators, including former advisor Thalen, planning the assassination of Matriarch Yolanda. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Mareth lunged from his seat, a weapon materializing in his hand. Jack reacted with combat-honed reflexes, deflecting the counselor's arm upward as the weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling. Security forces converged from all directions, subduing Mareth and his supporters with efficient precision. Jack found himself back-to-back with Liana, who had drawn her own weapon and was covering the matriarch. Humanity indeed, Yolanda remarked dryly as order was gradually restored. Your species certainly knows how to make an impression, Ambassador. The title still felt strange to Jack, but he accepted it with a respectful nod. Just doing what humans do best, Matriarch, adapting to unexpected circumstances. As the conspirators were led away, Liana moved to Jack's side, her hand finding his in a gesture that transcended diplomatic protocol. The banquet will proceed as scheduled, Yolanda announced to the remaining counselors, though perhaps with a slightly altered seating arrangement. Later, as they prepared for the evening's festivities, Jack found himself alone with Liana in her private quarters. The adrenaline of confrontation had given way to a different kind of excitement, one equally powerful but infinitely more pleasant. Ambassador Welch, she murmured, helping him adjust the formal Azurian attire he'd been provided for the banquet. It seems my grandmother was right about you deserving a reward. Jack caught her hands, bringing them to rest against his chest. I didn't help her for a reward. I know, Liana replied, her eyes shining with emotion that needed no translation across species. "That's precisely why you deserve one." The grand banquet hall of the Celestial Harmony glowed with bioluminescent decorations that cast a dreamlike ambiance over the assembled dignitaries. Jack stood at the entrance, momentarily overwhelmed by the transformation of the space that had, just hours earlier, been secured against assassination attempts. "Impressive recovery," he murmured to Liana, who stood beside him in a flowing gown that shimmered with subtle patterns reminiscent of Earth's northern lights. "No one would guess there was nearly a coup today." "Azurians excel at maintaining appearances," she replied with a wry smile, "though I suspect we could learn from humanity's ability to adapt to chaos rather than simply masking it." They entered together, drawing curious glances from the assembled council members and their entourages. Jack recognized the subtle shift in how he was perceived. No longer an oddity or a curiosity, but a diplomatic equal whose actions had saved their government from internal collapse. At the center of the hall stood an ornate table where the formal alliance documents awaited. Earth's preliminary approval had arrived via emergency quantum transmission after Jack's hasty briefing to his superiors. The speed of the response suggested Earth's leadership had been hoping for such an opportunity. Matriarch Ilanda beckoned them forward. Her ceremonial attire was magnificent, layers of translucent fabric that seemed to capture and amplify the room's lighting, creating an aura of authority around her slender frame. "Ambassador Welch," she greeted him formally, "are you prepared to make history?" "I believe I already did that by sharing my potato chips," Jack replied with a smile that earned appreciative chuckles from those close enough to hear. The signing ceremony proceeded with the elaborate ritual that Azurians cherished. Jack followed Liana's subtle cues, performing each step with a respectful attention to detail that clearly impressed the council members. When the final flourish of his signature completed the document, a harmonic tone resonated throughout the chamber, the traditional Azurian acknowledgement of momentous occasions. "The first step of many," Ilanda announced to the assembly. "Tomorrow, Ambassador Welch will return to Earth with our delegation to formalize the alliance before your government." The announcement surprised Jack, though he maintained his diplomatic composure. Liana's hand found his beneath the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "I will personally accompany the ambassador," she added, her voice carrying the authority of her position as the matriarch's granddaughter, "to ensure smooth cultural transitions between our peoples." The remainder of the banquet passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Jack found himself explaining Earth customs to fascinated Azurians, from handshakes to the concept of dessert, apparently a novelty in Azurian cuisine, which didn't separate sweet flavors into a distinct course. "Your species compartmentalizes pleasure," one counselor observed. "We integrate it throughout the experience." "An interesting philosophical difference," Jack replied. "Perhaps there's a middle ground that combines the best of both approaches." As the evening progressed, Jack noticed Liana engaged in intense conversation with her grandmother. The matriarch's expression shifted from surprise to understanding to what appeared to be blessing. When Liana returned to his side, her eyes held a new certainty. "Grandmother has approved my request," she said softly. "I am to serve as permanent liaison to Earth, regardless of how the broader diplomatic missions develop." Jack felt a surge of emotion that transcended diplomatic considerations. That's wonderful news." "There's more," she continued, guiding him toward a quieter corner of the hall. "Azurian custom dictates that diplomatic unions be formalized through personal bonds as well as political ones." "Personal bonds," Jack repeated, his pulse quickening at her implication. "In ancient times, marriages between ruling houses secured alliances," she explained. "The tradition evolved into more flexible arrangements, but the principle remains. Personal connections strengthen political ties." Jack studied her face, searching for any sign of reluctance or duty-bound sacrifice. He found none, only the same desire and affection he felt growing within himself. "Are you proposing to me, Ambassador Liana?" he asked, unable to suppress a smile. "I'm proposing a beginning," she replied. "Our species have much to learn about each other. I suggest we conduct thorough research." The double meaning in her words sent a pleasant warmth through his body. "I've always been dedicated to scientific inquiry," he murmured, drawing her closer. Their kiss, though brief out of respect for the public setting, carried promises that needed no translation across species. The banquet concluded with a ceremonial toast to new beginnings. As the gathering dispersed, Yolanda approached them with a knowing smile. "The celestial harmony departs for Earth at midday tomorrow," she informed them. "I suggest you use the intervening hours to prepare for the journey." Jack recognized the deliberate ambiguity in her suggestion. "We'll be thoroughly prepared, matriarch." When they finally escaped the diplomatic formalities, Jack and Liana retreated to his quarters, now swept clean of surveillance devices. The moment the door sealed behind them, the careful restraint they'd maintained throughout the evening dissolved. Their embrace was passionate yet tender, exploratory yet somehow familiar, as if their bodies recognized each other despite the differences in their biology. "I've been waiting for this since I first saw you on that landing pad," Jack admitted, his fingers tracing the luminescent patterns that appeared on her skin where he touched. "And I've been fascinated by you since Grandmother described the compassionate human who shared his food with a stranger," Liana replied, her hands exploring the contours of his chest. "Though I must admit the reality exceeds the description." What followed was a night of discovery, of similarities and differences, of unexpected pleasures and shared passions. They found their way together with laughter and wonder, their connection transcending the physical to forge something neither had anticipated when their paths crossed outside that alien grocery store. Morning found them entwined, Jack watching in fascination as the rising lights of the ship's day cycle caused subtle color changes in Liana's skin. "Earth's sunrise is even more spectacular," he promised, brushing a kiss against her shoulder. "The way natural light filters through our atmosphere creates colors I can't wait to show you." "I look forward to experiencing all Earth has to offer," she replied, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his chest. "Though I suspect its greatest wonder is its people." As they prepared for departure, Jack received a message from Earth Command. His new diplomatic status had been officially recognized, with commendations for his handling of the Azurian situation. What had begun as a simple shore leave had transformed into the most significant first contact scenario in human history. Standing on the observation deck as the celestial harmony prepared to depart Orbit 9, Jack found himself reflecting on the chain of events that had led to this moment. A simple act of kindness toward a stranger, something his parents had taught him was simply the right thing to do, had altered the course of interstellar relations. Liana joined him, slipping her hand into his as they watched the station recede. "Thinking deep thoughts, Ambassador?" she asked. "Just appreciating how the smallest actions can have the largest consequences," he replied. "If I hadn't been walking past that store at that exact moment..." "Grandmother believes there are no coincidences," Liana said, "that the universe arranges itself to bring together those who need to find each other." Jack smiled, pulling her closer as the stars stretched into streaks of light around them. "Then I'm grateful to the universe for its excellent timing." The celestial harmony accelerated toward Earth, carrying with it the promise of a new era, not just for diplomacy, but for Jack and Liana, whose unexpected connection had blossomed into something neither could have imagined when they first met. As they stood together watching the cosmic ballet unfold before them, Jack reflected that perhaps the greatest adventure wasn't exploring strange new worlds or forging interstellar alliances, but finding someone with whom to share the journey, even if they came from different stars.